wants to sing show tunes.
The original 3 seasons of Family Guy, in every sense of the word, was an entirely different show. After it was cancelled briefly, it got revived due to excellent DVD sales. And while it did maintain its quality for a good while, the charm of those first 3 seasons was never really recaptured. And as many people point out, all of the main characters were very, very different during this period, to the point where we wanted to dive into and analyze the morality from this era exclusively. I'm Kyle with Wicked Binge, and this is Classic Seasons 1 to 3 Family Guy characters, good to evil. As usual, we'll be starting with the most noble character and working our way down to the most evil. These characters are the good. Now, the gold medal of good was a bit of a tough decision, but we're gonna give it to Cleveland Brown. Cleveland could more or less be described as the anti-Family Guy character, even in these earlier, more tame seasons. In contrast to the show's sarcastic, over-the-top tone, Cleveland is the straight man of the group. He's characterized by being a very nice and passive man.
Why don't you just suck the fat out?
He's polite, incredibly forgiving, and an overall good friend who's always willing to help those in need. He might just be the friendliest face in Quahog, and we're giving him the gold medal of good simply because there's really nothing bad you can say about him either. Cleveland is a total sweetheart and a great neighbor. Next up, for our silver medal of good, we're going with a deep-cut character who hasn't appeared since season 3, Dr. Bruce Kaplan. Not to be confused with the soft-spoken Bruce who, although a mainstay, has few early appearances. Dr. Kaplan is Brian's therapist, a forgotten aspect of his character. Dr. Kaplan helped Brian to confront some of his issues, specifically his feelings for Lois and his struggle with addiction later on. Sadly, he was fired by Brian during his cocaine addiction phase.
But the real hero here is God for blessing me with this nose.
But he's a genuinely good man who wants to help him, offering Brian comfort and support beyond what you'd expect from a typical therapist. Next up is the first of many, and we do mean many, characters who fell off from their early season's morality. Bonnie Swanson gets the bronze medal of good. She is utterly unrecognizable from the cold, downright psychotic wife she's become in later seasons. Bonnie is Joe's wife, and in this era, he really couldn't ask for a better one. Bonnie is actually similar to Cleveland in personality. She's polite, passive, and an overall supportive wife, who's always her husband's biggest cheerleader. And there's really nothing bad to say about her, at least in these 3 seasons. And as the old saying goes, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. On that note, next up are the Quahog neighbors' kids, Kevin Swanson and Cleveland Jr. Neither of these two had much screen time, and they'd certainly change quite a bit later on, with Kevin Swanson becoming a traumatized war veteran, and Cleveland Jr. being strangled to death and replaced with someone who looks nothing like him. But in the classic seasons, they both seem like nice kids. And again, not really anything negative you can say. Speaking of changes, next up is the first of the Griffins, and perhaps the one who changed the most over the course of the series, Brian Griffin. Brian is the embodiment of dog status as symbols of man's best friend. But while he's the voice of moral reason for the Griffin family, he's much more than just an earpiece.
That's hilarious.
He's a kind-hearted activist who cares deeply for his own rights and learning about who he is, making strides to work on himself consistently. He's not perfect. He does have a bit of an alcohol problem and can act on impulses sometimes, like the time he breeded with Mr. Pewterschmidt's prize race dog, Seabreeze, during a race. On the whole though, Brian is a pretty moral guy, and is ironically the voice of reason for the Griffin family. Enjoy it while it lasts. Oh, and on the subject of dogs, let's give a quick mention to Brian's cousin, Jasper. Since he only appears in a couple episodes, we can't say too much about Jasper, but he is a very friendly guy and a supportive cousin who Brian can always turn to. He's also the series' first openly gay rep.
Oh, score 1 for me.
Speaking of which, if you've mostly watched Modern Family Guy, the phrase Peter's boss might bring Angela to mind. But before her, there was Mr. Weed. Jonathan Weed is the owner of the Happy-Go-Lucky Toy Factory. He is a decent man, looking after his employees fairly well, and making efforts to ensure they're treated fairly, as evidenced by him sending Peter to a woman's sensitivity class.
Our company does not pay him to think.
Though there's not a whole lot to say about him. At best, he's a pretty good boss and a nice guy, and at worst, he comes off a bit strong. Easily the nicest of the Griffin kids. We're giving the next spot on the list to Chris Griffin. Debatably Peter's favorite kid, Chris is a soft-hearted guy with brains that rival Peter's, but not in the best way.
Here we go, Dad!
As dull as Chris is, he is a sweet kid, often trying way too hard to please others, even at his own expense. There are times where he lets the typical teenage lust for popularity take over, and he can be a little unstable at times. But Chris is still a nice dude. Dim-witted and slow, which is why he earns the Sloth Sinner medal, but still a good guy. One of the DVD boxes summed up his character pretty well. Chris wouldn't hurt a fly unless it landed on his hot dog. But even though he's got a leg up on our next entry, we still really think this next one's a great neighbor. So let's roll Joe Swanson into the next spot. While later seasons have given him something of a pitiful reputation, Joe was originally the resident cool guy of Quahog, a wheelchair-bound policeman who was paralyzed after a standoff with the Grinch. He's a good-natured and friendly guy who's always ready to defend the innocent and uphold the law. He's probably the most outwardly heroic character in the cast, so why isn't he number one?
Somehow I'm less than surprised.
Well, he does have a temper, appearing as rather controlling over others and, on occasion, revealing that he attacked his son for winning in a game. We'll say that Joe has a lot of pride, and for that reason, he earns the Pride Sinner medal.
Thank you, thank you.
He does his best to keep it all in check though, and his willingness to put himself in harm's way for others is still worth a lot. And rounding out our good characters is the character the show ironically wants us to hate the most. But Meg Griffin is actually pretty darn okay. Being your typical teenage wallflower, she's desperate for popularity and will follow just about any crowd to achieve it. Meg is generally a nice girl who loves her family, and her worst moments really begin and end at her being a typical social status pursuing teenager.
This is not normal.
That jealousy earns her the Envy Sinner medal. She's not a hero, but Meg is pretty okay, even if the later seasons think she's anything but. With the good section wrapped up, we now move into more neutral territory. These characters fall in the moral gray area. Now, this might be a surprise, but even in the earlier Family Guy seasons, we have to put Lois Griffin in the gray section. Lois's original characterization was that of a loving, hard-working mother. She shows impressive patience with Peter's antics, sticking by him through even his absolute worst moments.
Where the hell's Peter?
That said, Lois isn't perfect either. She might be much more responsible than Peter, but she also tends to lose her temper a lot quicker. This ranges from her being a general nag to her losing complete control of her temper over her house being out of paper towels on Christmas, even trying to ruin the town's Christmas tree. She also lets power go to her head when she learns self-defense in Kung Fu class. While we'll submit that she's a decent person overall, we still feel she needs to be in the gray area, just barely. Geez, Lois, you're in the gray area? Man, that sucks. But not as bad as the time we had to put Peter Griffin down there. While he is a far cry from the comical sociopath he's become in later seasons, Peter Griffin's original design was more or less a parody of Homer Simpson. Peter is reckless, childish, impulsive, and often selfish, and amps all those traits up to 11.
3 bullets, last guy standing keeps the trophy. Me first.
Peter's immense stupidity also earns him the Darwin Sinner medal. But there's a difference in these earlier seasons, and that difference is that Peter pretty much always means well. The first episode is a perfect example of this. He ends up committing welfare fraud, which isn't good, but he only did this to give his family the life that he thought they deserved. He also took Brian in when he was astray on the streets, and despite his ignorance, he is genuinely a loving husband and father. He causes his fair share of trouble, often preventable, but when push comes to shove, Peter always does the right thing by the end of the day.
This is my friend Big Fat Polly.
We certainly can't call a guy who would masquerade as a cool high school student to stop a drug epidemic, stick up for his best friend and pet dog so he won't get neutered, or offer to take a bullet for his wife anything close to a bad guy. But we'll sum up Peter and Lois like this. While they are far from beacons of morality, they're mostly harmless and are genuinely loving parents and spouses. But in Peter's case, he's just too damn chaotic and occasionally thoughtless to place him anywhere else but the gray area. Now, if you want an example of said chaos, look no further than his iconic fights with Ernie the Giant Chicken. He's well known for his series-long beef with Peter, all of which started because of an expired coupon. While we'll submit that Peter certainly overreacted, none of it would have happened if Ernie hadn't done something so cruel. He's complicit in multiple counts of assault, property damage, etc. But maybe he's a perfectly nice guy outside of these fights. Ironically, that would place him right alongside Peter. So we'll give him the benefit of the doubt and let them duke it out amongst themselves. Before Mort Goldman became a recurring character, we saw much more of his son, Neil Goldman. His character, more or less, begins and ends at being that guy in high school. Ladies, you probably know what we mean. The weird guy that won't take no for an answer, obsessively asking Meg out no matter how clear she makes it that she's not interested.
I'm way too cool to be seen with you.
Really?
He's the embodiment of a guy who can't respect someone's boundaries to save his life, but other than that, he's pretty much harmless. Just very, very creepy. Next, we have two of the most iconic recurring gag characters in Family Guy, Tom Tucker and Diane Simmons. These two act as Quahog Channel 5 News primary anchors, and there's little to say about them really. They bicker with and insult each other constantly and make insensitive comments quite often. That said, they're not outright evil. In Tom Tucker's case, he seems to care about his son, Jake Tucker, being upset at those who insult his facial disfigurement.
Dad, they're staring at me. They're just jealous.
As for Diane, well, at least she wasn't a murderer at this point, so that's nice. Every good news anchor needs a good story, and every good story needs a mayor. And there's never going to be another mayor like Mayor Adam West. The fact that Adam West is Quahog's utterly unpredictable mayor is honestly a testament to classic Family Guy's sense of humor, and he really does capture the spirit of these earlier seasons. There's absolutely no rhyme or reason to most of the things Adam West does. He's the embodiment of the chaotic neutral alignment.
How do you know my language?
His scatterbrained nature leads to him acting irresponsibly as Quahog's mayor, like wasting the taxpayers' money on an investigation on water theft.
Somebody's stealing my water.
He might be stubborn and irresponsible, but he's not an outright bad person. He's just legitimately insane. But at least if the Noid ruins your pizza, you know you can count on him to avenge it. If you thought having Adam West as the mayor of Quahog was strange, what if we told you Norm Macdonald was its Grim Reaper? Death is one of Family Guy's most memorable guest characters. Even though he's taking people's souls, we're not going to call him a bad guy, since he is the literal embodiment of death and he has a job to do. It's not like he can just stop being death. His job is to take the souls of people who have died. And he can even be nice sometimes, helping Peter learn the lesson he needs to in order to prevent Lois divorcing him in the future. That said, he's also not above abusing his power. On one occasion, he kills his date just for not being a good conversationalist. So while he's not a villain, he's certainly not a hero. And rounding out our gray area is a character who, given our guidelines, is just a few episodes short of a spot in the bad section. Loretta Brown. Fans probably remember Loretta as Cleveland's unfaithful ex-wife, which is quite understandable given that it's the only thing really memorable about her character. But that episode came out in early season 4, meaning it's just outside of our range of discussion for today.
As beautiful as an HBO minority fairy tale.
So while we can still call Loretta rude, brash, and overly controlling of her husband, we can't say that she's a full-on bad person. She's just really off-putting, and Cleveland deserves better. With the gray area complete, we now move into the dark side. These characters are the bad and the evil. High school bullies are no rare occurrence, even in cartoons. And Connie D'Amico is Family Guy's answer to the archetype, and she fits it really well. As the resident popular kid of James Woods High, she's the envy of all the other kids at school, most often Meg, who would be ecstatic if she even noticed her at some point. Connie isn't as bad as characters down the line for the simple reason that she isn't a murderer, sex offender, or criminal. That alone separates her from most of the characters beneath her. But Connie is downright mean, using her status to push Meg around and sometimes even lead her on into thinking they're friends, like the time she tricked her into kissing a pig on the mouth at one of her famed parties.
I think I feel worse for the pig.
She's shallow, mean, and never really shows any remorse for it. And if you ask us, she really needs to repent. If we were to tell our next character about her, he would surely agree. But don't let that fool you into thinking that Francis Griffin is innocent. If Ned Flanders is an example of a good religious man, Francis Griffin is the opposite. Imagine everything that a good Christian man is supposed to be. Generous, compassionate, patient, loving, etc. And make sure absolutely none of those traits are present. Amp the negative opposing traits to 11, and you've got Francis Griffin.
What's your favorite book of the Bible?
We don't have anything nice to say about Francis. He's mean, spiteful, stubborn, and downright cruel. As far as we're concerned, his claim that he loves Peter is nothing more than an attempt to save face. There's just no evidence for it. But as far as cruel father figures go, even Francis Griffin can't beat Carter Peterschmidt, father to Lois and father-in-law to Peter. Carter is every man's greatest fear as far as in-laws are concerned. He doesn't approve of Peter at all, as shown best in the episode Death Lives, where it's revealed that he dumped Peter in the ocean to try and keep Lois from marrying him. He not only cares more about his own pride and status than his daughter's happiness, but he's willing to use his immense wealth and resources to exploit others others and even get them out of the picture as needed. Carter is a greedy man, and for that reason, he definitely earns the Greed Sinner medal. Carter is also extremely spiteful. When Brian breeds with his racing dog, Seabreeze, he tries his hardest to get him neutered and keep him from seeing his kids. Really, his only saving graces are that he does love his daughter, and isn't as evil as he gets in later seasons.
Peter, I'm putting together another card game. You in?
I mean, at least he hasn't hidden the cure for cancer yet. Who else but Quagmire could take the bronze medal of evil? While he might be one of the most hilarious characters in Family Guy, Quagmire is far from a good guy. How do we put this lightly? Well, let's start with his good traits. Quagmire does care about his friends and neighbors to an extent. He's a reliable confidant to Peter, Joe, and Cleveland. And yeah, that's about it. While Family Guy has made a genuine effort to give Quagmire more positive traits in later seasons, his original character is really just honed in on him being a perv, and even someone who commits assault. Quagmire earns the Lust Sinner medal for obvious reasons. He seems almost proud of this and has practically no limitations. He even goes after high school girls on a few occasions. Remember that party of Connie's we mentioned earlier? As a way of getting back at her for bullying Meg, Lois sent Quagmire an invitation, and he sure liked where it was going.
I don't want to come between you, or do I?
It might be controversial to put the somewhat lovable Quagmire above someone as vile as Carter, but while later seasons might have revealed Carter as being an even worse man than he originally was, Quagmire was at his peak of immorality from the very beginning of the series. Since we're talking classic seasons here, Quagmire definitely takes the bronze medal of evil. But next, we have a character who started at peak evil and just stayed right there. Herbert the Pervert takes home the silver medal of evil. On the outside, Herbert is a soft-spoken, gentle old man, but as his nickname suggests, Herbert is a disgusting child predator, constantly scheming to lure kids into his basement with the promise of popsicles. We don't even want to know what's in those, by the way. His character begins and ends right there. He only debuts in the latter half of season 3, but honestly, that doesn't change much about his placement considering his character doesn't really go deeper than this. Whether you love him for his antics or hate him for his, well, everything, there's really no denying that Herbert is the scum of the earth. The only question is, how on earth did he not take the gold medal of evil? Call it controversial if you will, but pure evil deserves credit where it's due. That said, we're giving our gold medal of evil to Stewie Griffin. Stewie's grown a lot over the course of the series. He's better known now as flamboyant and sarcastic and kind of a gay icon, but his classic personality is that of an evil genius straight out of the womb. He might not fully understand the world yet, but he's already quite dangerous.
Look at me! I'm a dirty, foul little boy.
He regularly attempts to kill his mother, Lois, which is already enough to put him pretty darn low on the list. But he doesn't stop there. He's not above infiltrating Peter's body to keep their future children from being born, controlling Chris's mind to effectively make him into a robot, and even freezing a friendly airport security guard in carbonite, just for seemingly no reason at all. He was so nice too. All this anger and violence more than earns him the Wrath Sinner medal. Now, Stewie does have some good moments, but they're generally only done out of his own necessity. He may be hilarious and honestly pretty darn lovable, but Stewie is still constantly scheming to take over the world, as well as kill his own mother and get anyone or anything who happens to get in his way or even inconvenience him out of the picture. And honestly, we feel like we'd be doing a disservice to classic Stewie Griffin if we labeled him anything but the most evil character in classic Family Guy. But there was that one time he used his birthday wish to revive Disco. Whether that's a Mark IV or against him is really up to you guys.